That's not how she writes. Certify there are no discrepancies.
Then I can't sign.
The original approvals were moved.
Then why are they inviting you in?
Ethan Cook was 41, a quiet forensic accounting consultant living in Bellevue, Washington. Most people believed his wife, Maya Cook, was the successful one climbing the corporate ladder, while Ethan spent his days behind spreadsheets at home. They saw an ordinary man who watered his lawn every Saturday, waved to neighbors, and drove the same 8-year-old pickup truck. What they didn't know was that Ethan had spent 2 decades learning how lies leave fingerprints long before people do. At exactly 2:03 a.m., his phone vibrated. Maya's number appeared, but the message read, "She's busy right now. She'll call back." Ethan stared at the unfamiliar wording, and a cold certainty settled over him before he typed a single reply. "If you're watching from somewhere in the world, let me know your country and your local time in the comments. I always enjoy seeing where these stories are reaching. And if you enjoy slow burn mysteries where patience beats panic, consider subscribing so you won't miss tomorrow's story." Ethan Cook did nothing for the first 30 seconds. His thumb hovered above the keyboard before drifting away from the screen. Most people would have called immediately. Some would have driven across the city in anger. Others would have flooded the phone with desperate messages demanding answers. Ethan did none of those things. He lowered the brightness on his phone and read the message again. "She's busy right now. She'll call back." 9 words. 9 ordinary words. Yet they felt strangely foreign. Maya never wrote contractions in text messages after midnight, because autocorrect on her company-issued iPhone always expanded them. She also never referred to herself in the third person. If she couldn't answer, she always typed, "I'm tied up, I'll call you soon." Not once in 14 years of marriage had she written, "She's busy." Someone else had written that sentence. The digital clock on the nightstand turned from 2:03 to 2:04. Ethan quietly reached for the notebook inside the drawer beside the bed. It wasn't a journal. It contained nothing emotional, only dates, observations, addresses, and reminders. Years ago, he had developed the habit of writing events before memory had the chance to edit them. He wrote exactly 3 lines. 2:03 a.m. Text received from Maya's phone. Language inconsistent with sender. He underlined the time once, then he picked up his phone again. Instead of replying, he took 3 screenshots. One showed the conversation. The second captured the notification banner. The third included the phone's clock and battery percentage. Next, he enabled automatic cloud synchronization for the conversation history. The backup would preserve message metadata even if the conversation disappeared later. Only after every image had uploaded did he lock the phone. His heartbeat remained steady. Outside, Bellevue was silent beneath a thin layer of mist. Streetlights reflected across damp pavement. Somewhere several blocks away, a freight train sounded its horn before disappearing into the darkness. Ethan walked downstairs without turning on the kitchen lights. He poured himself a glass of cold water and stood beside the window overlooking the quiet neighborhood. Across the street, the Peterson family's porch light still glowed. Their teenage son had probably forgotten to switch it off again. Everything looked normal. That was what disturbed him most. Normal evenings rarely shattered without warning. His eyes drifted toward the calendar hanging beside the refrigerator. Maya's handwriting covered nearly every square. Board meeting, executive dinner, vendor review, compliance briefing, late strategy session. During the previous 3 months, the words "late meeting" had appeared so frequently that Ethan had stopped questioning them aloud. Maya worked as Senior Operations Director at Evergreen Biotech Solutions, one of Seattle's fastest-growing medical supply companies. Long hours came with executive responsibility, or so everyone believed. He unlocked his phone again and opened their shared family calendar. 3 late meetings during the previous week, 5 during the previous 2 weeks, 11 during the previous month. His eyes narrowed. Almost every late-night meeting involved one name: Ryan Whitmore, Chief Executive Officer, Ethan wasn't looking for betrayal. He was looking for patterns. Patterns rarely lied. He quietly opened his laptop on the kitchen island. The screen illuminated the room with a pale blue glow. Within minutes, he logged into the secure cloud account he and Maya shared for household documents. He wasn't searching through her private files. He simply compared travel reimbursements, calendar invitations, and restaurant charges that had automatically synchronized with their joint expense tracker. Nothing illegal, nothing dramatic, only timestamps, locations, receipts. One expense immediately stood out. 3 nights earlier, Maya had submitted reimbursement for dinner at North Harbor Steakhouse. The receipt listed 2 guests, executive client meeting. The dinner ended at 8:47 p.m., yet her phone had not arrived home until nearly 11:30. Where had those missing hours gone? He made another note. Missing timeline approximately 2 hours 40 minutes. Still no conclusions, only facts. The phone remained silent. At 2:18 a.m., Ethan slipped on a dark jacket and picked up his truck keys. The old silver Ford F-150 started on the second turn of the ignition. He drove without music, without rushing. The nearly empty freeway carried only delivery trucks and airport traffic. Bellevue's skyline shimmered ahead beneath scattered clouds. Evergreen Biotech occupied 12 floors inside a modern glass building overlooking Lake Washington. Ethan parked across the street beside a closed pharmacy. He killed the engine, waited. Nothing happened for nearly 12 minutes. Cleaning crews moved between offices. A security guard stepped outside to smoke. An elevator glowed behind the glass entrance before disappearing again. At exactly 2:37 a.m., movement caught his attention, not through the main lobby, through a side entrance normally reserved for executives. Ryan Whitmore emerged first. Even from across the street, he carried himself with practiced confidence. Tailored charcoal suit, navy overcoat draped over one shoulder, phone pressed against one ear. He wasn't smiling. He looked impatient. A few seconds later, Maya stepped outside. She wore the same cream-colored blouse Ethan had watched her iron before work that morning. Her blazer hung over one arm. She looked exhausted. Not guilty. Exhausted. Her shoulders were slightly hunched, her pace slower than Ryan's. She didn't speak. Ryan held the security door while continuing his phone conversation. Maya stared toward the parking garage instead of at him. Ethan watched carefully. If they were lovers, they hid it remarkably well. No laughter, no touching, no lingering eye contact, only tension. Ryan ended his call, gestured toward a black Mercedes S-Class, and opened the passenger door. Maya hesitated, just for a second. Then she climbed inside. Ethan waited another 20 seconds before starting his truck. He stayed 6 or 7 vehicles behind, never closer, never directly aligned. The Mercedes crossed Interstate 90 toward downtown Seattle. Rain began falling lightly against the windshield. Ryan never exceeded the speed limit. Professional drivers rarely did. 22 minutes later, the Mercedes turned beneath the illuminated entrance of Harbor Grand Hotel, one of Seattle's most expensive hotels. Business executives stayed there frequently. So did politicians, corporate lawyers, international investors. The valet approached immediately. Ryan handed over the keys without looking back. Maya stepped out slowly. She adjusted her purse strap and glanced once over her shoulder. Not toward Ryan. Toward the empty street behind them. For one brief second, Ethan almost believed she was searching for someone, or hoping someone had followed. Ryan said something Ethan couldn't hear. Maya gave one small nod. They walked through the revolving glass doors. Still no hand-holding, still no intimacy, only silence. Ethan parked half a block away. He remained inside his truck. He had every opportunity to march into the hotel, every opportunity to demand answers. Instead, he lowered the driver's seat slightly and watched the lobby through the rain-speckled windshield, because experience had taught him something painful years earlier. The truth almost always arrived 5 minutes after anger, and 5 minutes of patience could change an entire case. At 2:59 a.m., The elevator inside the hotel's glass atrium began climbing towards the upper floors. Ethan followed it with his eyes until the illuminated numbers stopped on the 21st floor. He reached for his notebook again. Then he wrote only one sentence. They entered together. They did not arrive as two people in love. They arrived as two people carrying the same burden. He closed the notebook. For the first time that night, Ethan felt certain he wasn't chasing an affair. He was standing at the edge of something far larger. The rain continued falling long after the lights on the 21st floor stopped moving. Ethan remained inside his truck until nearly 4 o'clock. He never saw Maya come back down. He never saw Ryan leave. Eventually, he started the engine and drove home through nearly empty streets, saying nothing to himself. Silence had become a discipline years earlier. It was a lesson learned the hard way. Long before Bellevue, before Maya, before quiet suburban evenings and neighborhood barbecues, Ethan Cook had spent 19 years assisting federal investigators in financial crime cases. His official title had changed several times over the years, but his work had always revolved around the same idea. Money always remembered where people wanted it to forget. He had watched billion-dollar corporations collapse because a receptionist printed one email. He had seen respected executives sentenced because they rounded numbers that should never have been rounded. He had interviewed accountants who lied confidently for months before accidentally contradicting a hotel receipt worth $43. People imagined financial investigations were built around brilliant interrogations. They weren't. They were built around patience. The loudest person in the room almost never won. The person who waited usually did. As dawn approached, Ethan parked in his driveway and sat inside the truck for another minute. The neighborhood slowly came alive. A newspaper landed on a nearby porch. A jogger crossed the intersection wearing reflective gear. Sprinklers switched on somewhere behind the houses. Nothing looked different, yet everything had changed. He entered the house quietly. Maya still hadn't returned. Instead of waiting beside the window, Ethan showered, changed into a gray sweater, brewed fresh coffee, and opened the office upstairs. It looked exactly like any accountant's workspace. 2 monitors, shelves filled with tax references, family photographs, a small bonsai tree near the window. Visitors always assumed this was where Ethan prepared financial reports for small businesses. Only one locked cabinet hinted that another life had existed before this one. He unlocked it. Inside rested several old investigation notebooks, legal reference manuals, and an encrypted external drive that had not been powered on for nearly 3 years. He didn't need the drive. He needed one business card tucked inside an envelope. Victoria Bennett, retired assistant United States attorney. Seattle. The number hadn't changed in almost a decade. He dialed once. Victoria answered on the 4th ring. "You never call before 7, she said calmly. "I know." "Someone die?" "No." "Someone steal?" "I don't know yet." She waited. Victoria had always understood that silence invited useful facts. "I received a text from Maya's phone last night," Ethan finally said. "You think it wasn't her?" "I know it wasn't." "Affair." "I don't think that's the whole story." "What do you have?" Ethan listed only observable facts: the wording, the timestamp, the hotel, Ryan Whitmore, the executive entrance, Maya's behavior, nothing more. When he finished, Victoria remained quiet for several seconds. Finally, she spoke. "Don't accuse anyone." "I wasn't planning to." "Don't confront your wife." "I won't." "And don't investigate anything illegally just because you used to know how." A faint smile crossed Ethan's face. "I remember the rules." "I know you do," Victoria replied, "but emotions make experienced people forget procedures." "I haven't forgotten." "Good." Another pause. Then she added the sentence Ethan expected. "Preserve evidence before collecting more." The call ended 3 minutes later. Ethan placed the business card back inside the cabinet. Then he turned toward his computer. Evergreen Biotech Solutions. He had heard the company's name before Maya joined 3 years earlier. It manufactured specialized medical equipment distributed throughout the Pacific Northwest. Hospitals praised its rapid expansion. Business magazines celebrated Ryan Whitmore as an innovative executive. Everything looked successful. Perhaps too successful. Ethan searched only public databases, corporate registrations, annual reports, vendor disclosures, government procurement filings. Nothing confidential, nothing hidden. 45 minutes later, a spreadsheet began forming across one monitor: vendor, payment amount, invoice date, contract reference. Every public contract Evergreen had received during the previous 5 years. One vendor immediately caught his attention: North Ridge Logistics, LLC. The company had received nearly $28 million in transportation payments. Odd. Evergreen owned its own regional distribution network. Why outsource so much freight? He searched the company registration. Very little information appeared. Registered office, mail forwarding address, no employee listings, no public website, no operational history before 4 years ago. Shell companies often looked exactly like this. Not proof, only possibility. He continued working. Another name appeared: Silver Creek Procurement Partners, consulting fees, $12 million. Again, almost no public footprint. Ethan zoomed out. He wasn't searching for crimes. He was searching for irregularity. Healthy companies usually left predictable financial patterns. Unhealthy companies left gaps. Evergreen contained far too many gaps. By mid-morning, he had built a timeline stretching across 5 years. Then something unusual happened. One vendor registration number looked strangely familiar. Not the company, the number itself. His eyes narrowed. He leaned closer toward the monitor. Where had he seen it before? He closed his eyes. Years of investigations had trained his memory differently from most people. He rarely remembered names first. He remembered sequences, dates, invoice codes, case numbers. This registration sequence belonged somewhere in the past. He opened an archive containing publicly available federal bankruptcy filings. Search. Nothing. He searched procurement litigation. Nothing. He searched civil fraud databases. Still nothing. Then memory finally surfaced. Not Seattle. Chicago, 8 years earlier. A hospital procurement investigation involving inflated equipment contracts. Different company, different executives, same registration accountant. Ethan immediately located an archived court document. There it was. The accountant who incorporated North Ridge Logistics had previously formed 17 corporations later identified as shell companies during a federal healthcare fraud investigation. The accountant himself had never been convicted, but his paperwork had appeared everywhere. Coincidence possibly, probability less likely. He highlighted the name, printed the page, placed it beside his notebook. Again, no conclusions, only connections. His phone vibrated. For one brief second, he expected Maya. Instead, it was an automated bank fraud alert advertising new security features. He dismissed it, then looked toward the family photograph sitting beside the monitor. It had been taken on the Oregon coast 3 summers earlier. Maya stood barefoot in the sand, laughing because the Pacific had nearly stolen her hat. That smile looked genuine, not rehearsed, not manipulated. Whatever had happened during the past several months had changed her slowly enough that Ethan hadn't recognized it until now. He refused to rewrite 14 years of marriage based on one mysterious night. Evidence deserved context. Emotion did not. He returned to the spreadsheet. Another search, another document, another vendor. By early afternoon, a web of interconnected companies had begun taking shape. Some shared mailing addresses, others shared registered agents. Several transferred ownership within weeks of receiving government contracts. Too many coincidences. Far too many. Then one final search result appeared near the bottom of the screen. Evergreen Biotech had recently acquired a small medical logistics company. The acquisition price seemed ordinary. The seller did not. The signature authorizing the transaction belonged to someone Ethan recognized immediately, not because he had met the man, because he had testified against him nearly 10 years earlier during a federal fraud investigation. The man had disappeared after accepting a plea agreement. He should never have been connected to another healthcare procurement company. Ethan stared at the signature for nearly a full minute. Outside his office window, clouds drifted across a pale Washington sky. Inside the room suddenly felt much smaller. He slowly reached for his notebook. This time, instead of writing an observation, he wrote a question. Why would Ryan Whitmore be doing business with a man who should have vanished from federal contracting years ago? He closed the notebook. For the first time since receiving the text at 2:03 a.m., Ethan understood that the hotel meeting might have been the least important event of the entire night. Maya Cook unlocked the front door at 7:18 the next morning. Ethan heard the familiar click while standing in the kitchen rinsing a coffee mug beneath warm water. He didn't rush toward the hallway. He didn't pretend to be asleep. He simply turned off the faucet and waited. The front door closed gently. Keys landed inside the ceramic bowl beside the entrance. For a moment, there was only silence. Then Maya appeared. She looked nothing like the confident executive who usually left for work before sunrise. Dark circles rested beneath her eyes. Her cream-colored blouse was slightly wrinkled beneath her charcoal coat. Her hair, normally tied neatly into a low ponytail, had partially fallen loose. She looked as though she hadn't slept. Ethan. Her voice sounded softer than usual. You're home early, he answered calmly. She forced a tired smile. I never really came home. He nodded once. I figured. There was no accusation in his voice. That surprised her. She had clearly expected questions. Instead, Ethan walked toward the coffee maker. I just made a fresh pot. You didn't have to. I know. He poured coffee into her favorite blue ceramic mug. No sugar, just a splash of cream, exactly the way she always drank it. She accepted it with both hands. Thanks. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Rain continued tapping softly against the kitchen windows. The refrigerator hummed quietly. A delivery truck rolled past outside. Ordinary sounds, ordinary morning. Maya finally inhaled deeply. I'm sorry I didn't call. Ethan leaned lightly against the counter. What happened? The question contained no anger, only curiosity. She looked into the coffee instead of at him. We had an emergency board meeting. He waited. It lasted much longer than anyone expected. Another pause. Then Ryan insisted everyone stay to prepare documents before today's compliance review. Ethan nodded again. What kind of documents? She blinked. Financial approvals. Specific answer, not necessarily truthful. He continued. And afterward? We were all exhausted. She hesitated almost imperceptibly. So, Ryan suggested everyone get a few hotel rooms downtown rather than driving home. Everyone. Interesting choice of word. Who stayed? She looked toward the window. I don't remember everyone. Ethan noticed that immediately. Maya remembered names, always. She could recall entire seating charts from conferences years earlier. Now she suddenly couldn't remember co-workers who supposedly spent the night together. He simply said, long night. It really was. She smiled again. This one looked rehearsed. I'm going upstairs to shower. Of course. She picked up her purse. Halfway toward the staircase, she stopped. I'm sorry about the text. Ethan looked at her. What text? The one after 2. He watched her carefully. She had volunteered that information. Interesting. You mean the message saying you'd call later? Yes. I figured you were busy. A tiny flicker crossed her face. Relief or confusion, maybe both. I'll explain everything tonight. You don't have to rush. She nodded gratefully before disappearing upstairs. The second-floor bathroom door closed a few moments later. Water began running through the pipes. Only then did Ethan move. He walked quietly toward the ceramic bowl beside the entrance. Her keys remained exactly where she had dropped them. He wasn't interested in searching her belongings. He only observed. Her company access badge still hung from the keyring. Nothing unusual. Her purse remained zipped. Her overnight bag sat beside the staircase. Again, nothing remarkable. Observation, not intrusion. He returned to the kitchen table and opened the notebook. 7:18 a.m. Returned home. Claims emergency board meeting. Claims multiple executives stayed at hotel. Unable to identify attendees. He stopped writing. Another memory surfaced. During the conversation, Maya had never once mentioned Harbor Grand Hotel by name. She had said hotel rooms downtown. Why avoid the hotel's name? People telling the truth often included unnecessary details. People protecting information often removed them. He closed the notebook. Upstairs, the shower stopped. Minutes later, Maya came downstairs wearing comfortable clothes. She looked cleaner, less exhausted, still uneasy. I'll probably sleep for a while. I think that's a good idea. She smiled weakly. I love you, Ethan answered without hesitation. I love you too. And he meant it. Love and suspicion were not opposites. They could exist together. She disappeared into the bedroom. Within minutes, the house became quiet again. Ethan waited another 20 minutes before beginning his work. First, he opened the shared household expense account. Several hotel charges had already appeared. Room authorization, parking validation, restaurant service. Nothing surprising. But one item caught his attention. Only one room had been billed to Evergreen Biotech's corporate account. One room. Not multiple executive rooms. He frowned. Maybe the others had used separate billing. Maybe they had booked individually. Or maybe Maya had been told something that wasn't true. He didn't know. He refused to guess. Instead, he printed the transaction summary. Next, he opened the cloud storage automatically synchronized with their shared family photographs. Maya's phone routinely uploaded pictures whenever it connected to home Wi-Fi. Most were ordinary. Restaurant meals, office celebrations, sunsets, receipts. Then Ethan noticed something strange. The upload history skipped almost 6 hours. Normally, Maya's phone synchronized continuously. Between 8:14 p.m. and 2:52 a.m., nothing had uploaded. Not a single thumbnail. He checked the synchronization log. Uploads manually paused, resumed automatically later. That had never happened before. He wrote another note. Cloud sync disabled temporarily. Intentional or accidental unknown. Still no conclusions. His phone vibrated. Victoria Bennett. You've already found something. I found several things. Facts. Only facts. Good. He summarized Maya's explanation. Victoria interrupted only once. What bothered you most? Not the story. The omissions. Exactly. What kind? What kind of she removed details she normally wouldn't? Victoria laughed softly. People think lying requires inventing information. It usually requires deleting it. You're remembering. I never forgot. The call ended after only 4 minutes. Ethan returned to the office. This time he examined something much simpler. Parking records. The Harbor Grand validated valet tickets through a regional payment processor. Most transactions appeared anonymously, but timestamps remained. The Mercedes Ryan drove had entered at 2:58 a.m., no recorded exit until after 8:11 a.m. Interesting. Maya had arrived home only minutes later, so Ryan had left almost simultaneously. Again, no conclusions. Then Ethan checked one final source. Maya's smartwatch. Months earlier, she had voluntarily linked health data to a shared emergency account after spraining her ankle during a hiking trip. He wasn't reading private messages, only activity summaries. Her heart rate had remained elevated for nearly 3 hours, not brief spikes, sustained stress. Her sleep log recorded 0 minutes. No sleep, no rest, no overnight affair hidden beneath comfortable blankets, just continuous physiological stress. Ethan leaned back slowly. That single detail changed everything. People involved in secret romance often displayed excitement, not prolonged biological stress comparable to emergency response. He remembered watching her leave the hotel beside Ryan, shoulders lowered, eyes distant, walking like someone carrying invisible weight. The smartwatch supported exactly what he had observed. Pressure, not pleasure. His eyes drifted toward the bedroom door. Maya was asleep now, probably for the first time in nearly 24 hours. He refused to wake her. Instead, he continued assembling timelines, receipt beside receipt, timestamp beside timestamp, every observation organized chronologically. Late in the afternoon, another synchronization alert appeared. Several deleted text messages had quietly failed to disappear from one archived cloud backup created weeks earlier. The conversations themselves were incomplete, only fragments remained. Most contained harmless scheduling notes. Then one recovered line stopped Ethan's scrolling finger. Medical approvals must be completed before auditors arrive. No sender name remained, no recipient, only the sentence. Another fragment appeared beneath it. Do not leave anything in email. Then the archive ended. Ethan stared silently at the monitor. Those weren't the words of people planning an affair. Those were the words of people trying to hide documentation. He printed both fragments, placed them carefully inside a folder. Outside, evening shadows stretched across the backyard. Upstairs, Maya still slept. Downstairs, Ethan quietly added one more sentence to his notebook. Whatever frightened Maya had started long before the message sent at 2:03 a.m. Maya woke just before sunset. For several seconds, she remained perfectly still, staring at the ceiling as though trying to remember where she was. Then reality returned all at once. She reached for her phone. 31 unread emails, 12 missed calls, 9 encrypted messages through Evergreen's internal executive application. Her expression tightened. She read the first email without opening the others. Mandatory executive meeting. Conference room A, 7:30 p.m. Attendance required. No explanation. No agenda. Only one line at the bottom. Do not discuss ongoing compliance matters outside the executive team. She quietly lowered the phone. Outside the bedroom, she heard dishes being put away. Ethan, still home. She closed her eyes for a moment before walking downstairs. Ethan stood in the kitchen preparing dinner. Roasted chicken, rice, steamed vegetables. Simple food. Comfort food. The smell filled the house. You cooked. He smiled gently. You looked like you needed sleep more than grocery shopping. I probably did. She sat at the table. For several minutes they ate quietly. Neither rushed to fill the silence. Finally, Maya looked up. I have to go back. I assumed you might? There's another executive meeting. What time? 7:30. He nodded. She seemed relieved that he wasn't interrogating her. I don't know how late it'll be. I'll leave the porch light on. A faint smile crossed her face. I don't deserve you. Ethan looked at her for a long moment. Then he answered honestly. You look frightened. The fork stopped halfway to her mouth. What? You don't look guilty. You look afraid. For a brief second, something almost broke inside her. Her eyes shimmered. Then the moment disappeared. I'm just tired. Ethan didn't challenge the answer. He simply continued eating. An hour later, Maya left for work. Ethan watched from the living room window until her car disappeared around the corner. Only then did he return upstairs. His office felt unusually quiet. The folder marked Evergreen now contained nearly 30 pages of observations. Still no accusations. Still no conclusions. Only facts. He opened another public database, corporate leadership biographies. Ryan Whitmore appeared exactly as expected. MBA, former healthcare executive, frequent charity donor, featured speaker at leadership conferences, board member of 3 nonprofit organizations. Everything polished, everything impressive. Too impressive. Ethan had investigated enough executives to know that public biographies rarely revealed the whole story. He searched Ryan's history before Evergreen. Most articles praised his aggressive expansion strategy, acquisition after acquisition, rapid growth, increasing market share. Nothing illegal, nothing suspicious. Then he found an interview conducted almost 6 years earlier. Ryan had made one comment that immediately caught Ethan's attention. "We move faster than regulators." Perhaps Ryan had intended it as a joke. Perhaps the reporter had quoted him out of context. Still, most executives avoided comparing themselves to regulators altogether. Ethan wrote the quote into his notebook. Not evidence, just personality. Sometimes personality explained motive later. His phone rang. Claire Donovan. The name surprised him. He hadn't spoken to her in nearly 4 years. Claire worked as an investigative journalist for the Seattle Chronicle. They had first met during a federal procurement investigation years earlier. She respected evidence. He respected careful reporting. "You're difficult to reach," Claire said. "I've been trying to stay that way." She laughed. "I heard you left federal work completely." "I did." "You miss it?" "Sometimes." "I might have something interesting." Ethan leaned back. "I'm listening." Claire lowered her voice. "You ever hear of Evergreen Biotech?" His attention sharpened immediately. "What about them?" "I'm working on a completely unrelated healthcare story." "Go on." Three former employees contacted me separately. And they all refused formal interviews. Why? They were terrified. Claire rarely exaggerated. What frightened them? They all described the same thing. What? A culture where people disappeared. Ethan frowned. Disappeared. Not literally. They resigned. Transferred. Accepted unusually generous severance packages. But none of them would explain why. She paused. One woman cried during our phone conversation. What did she say? Claire glanced through her notes. Her exact words were... She read slowly. If Ryan calls you personally, your career is already over. Silence followed. Ethan finally asked, Did she explain my... No. Would she talk to me, Poyam? I doubt it. She changed her number yesterday. Claire continued, I'm not saying Evergreen is corrupt. I don't have enough evidence, but something inside that company makes intelligent adults behave like witnesses in organized crime cases. Ethan remained quiet. Claire knew him well enough not to push. Finally, she asked, Why are you interested? I can't answer that. I figured. If I learn anything verifiable, I'll call. The conversation ended. Ethan added another page to the folder. Former employees fearful. Possible intimidation culture. Again, not proof, only pattern. Around 8 that evening, Ethan left the house. Not to follow Maya. He had decided against that. Instead, he drove toward Evergreen's headquarters to observe from a distance. The executive parking garage remained brightly lit. Luxury vehicles occupied reserved spaces. Security had increased noticeably since the previous night. 2 guards now stood near the entrance. One checked identification badges. The other monitored arriving vehicles. Interesting. Compliance meetings usually didn't require additional security. Corporate crises often did. Ethan parked across the street beside a small coffee shop. The shop remained open late for hospital employees. He ordered black coffee and chose a table overlooking Evergreen's entrance. An hour passed. Executives continued arriving. Then Ryan Whitmore stepped out of another vehicle, not the Mercedes. Tonight he arrived in a black SUV. He appeared composed, confident. He greeted security by name, then disappeared inside. At 9:16 p.m., another familiar face appeared. Not Maya. A man approximately 50 years old carrying two heavy document boxes. The employee badge hanging from his jacket identified him as internal audit. He looked exhausted. A security guard stopped him. They exchanged a few words. The auditor reluctantly surrendered one of the boxes. The guard carried it back inside, alone. Odd. Internal audit documents usually traveled with the auditors responsible for them. Why separate them? Ethan made another note. At 9:42 p.m., nearly every office floor remained illuminated. The building looked unusually active. Then something unexpected happened. A dark blue SUV slowly entered the parking lot across from Ethan. It didn't belong to Evergreen. No company logo, no commercial markings. The vehicle parked 3 spaces away. Its headlights remained off. The engine stayed running. A man sat behind the wheel. He wasn't looking toward Evergreen. He was looking toward Ethan, not casually, constantly. Ethan pretended not to notice. He stirred his coffee, opened a newspaper someone had left behind, used the reflection in the coffee shop window instead of turning his head. The driver never looked away. 5 minutes passed, still watching. 10 minutes, still there. This wasn't coincidence anymore. Ethan quietly paid for his coffee and walked toward his truck. The blue SUV remained parked. As soon as Ethan started his engine, the SUV started too. He pulled onto the street. The SUV followed. 1 block, 2 blocks, 3. Always maintaining distance, professional, not aggressive, just close enough. Ethan didn't panic. Instead, he made 4 random turns through downtown Bellevue. Left, right, left again, another right. The SUV copied every movement. Confirmation. Someone was following him. He drove toward a busy shopping district instead of home. Crowded parking lots, complicated surveillance. The SUV slowed, circled once, then unexpectedly continued straight without entering. Gone. Ethan remained parked for several minutes. Watching, waiting. Nothing returned. Only then did he drive home. Inside the garage, he remained seated behind the steering wheel. Whoever had followed him hadn't tried to confront him, hadn't threatened him, hadn't spoken. They only wanted one thing, to know where he went, or whether he already knew something. Upstairs, Ethan opened the notebook again. For the first time since receiving the mysterious text, he wrote something that wasn't merely an observation. Someone has started watching me. He stared at the sentence for several seconds, then added one more line beneath it, which means someone believes I'm already asking the right questions. Ethan barely slept. The image of the blue SUV remained fixed in his mind, not because being followed frightened him, but because it confirmed a simple truth. Someone had noticed him before he had made a single move against them. That meant one of 2 things. Either his presence near Evergreen the previous night had been detected, or someone inside the company had already been watching everyone connected to Maya. Neither possibility was reassuring. At 6:15 the next morning, Ethan was already back in his office. A legal pad lay beside his keyboard. Across the top, he wrote a single question. Who benefits if Maya stays silent? He stared at the words. Years ago, one of his mentors had taught him that investigations often stalled because people asked the wrong questions. Who committed the crime? Who lied? Who stole the money? Those questions came too early. The better question was always who benefited. Money, power, protection, reputation. Eventually, every complicated case narrowed to one of those 4. His phone buzzed. A message from Maya. Morning. I had to leave early. Don't wait for breakfast. Love you. The message looked like something she would normally write. No strange wording, no unusual punctuation, no third-person references. Whoever had used her phone 2 nights earlier clearly wasn't texting now. Ethan read it twice before setting the phone down. He resisted the temptation to compare every word with previous messages. That path led people toward confirmation bias. He needed facts, not assumptions. At 8 o'clock, he drove downtown, not toward Evergreen, but toward the King County Public Records Office. Most investigators loved secret databases. Ethan preferred public ones. Public records embarrassed more criminals than hidden surveillance ever had. He requested incorporation documents connected to Northridge Logistics and Silver Creek Procurement Partners. The clerk disappeared into the archive. 10 minutes later, she returned with 2 folders. Anything else? No, thank you. He carried the documents to a reading table. Most of the pages contained routine legal filings, addresses, registered agents, annual renewals, nothing unusual. Then he noticed something small. Both companies had amended their ownership on exactly the same afternoon. Same date, same filing hour, even the notary stamp had been issued within 12 minutes. Independent companies rarely changed ownership simultaneously. Related companies often did. He copied the filing numbers into his notebook. The signatures looked different. The handwriting did not. Someone had tried very hard to make the documents appear unrelated. Whoever completed them had unconsciously formed the letter R, the same way in both filings. A tiny upward hook, almost invisible. People could disguise signatures. They rarely disguised handwriting habits. He smiled faintly. Small details. Always the small details. Back in his truck, Ethan received another call from Victoria Bennett. You sound busy. I found synchronized ownership transfers. Interesting. Not enough. It never is. He explained what he had discovered. Victoria listened carefully. Finally, she asked, Still staying patient? I'm trying. Good. Then her tone changed. I did something you didn't ask me to do. What? I called an old friend. Who? An inspector with the Department of Health. Ethan waited. He couldn't discuss active matters. I expected that. But he did tell me something public. What? Evergreen requested that several scheduled compliance inspections be postponed during the past 6 months. Ethan frowned. Why postpone them? He didn't know. Or couldn't say. Exactly. Companies preparing for inspections usually want them finished. They don't repeatedly delay them. Ethan wrote another note. Repeated inspection delays. Pattern continuing. Victoria sighed. I have a feeling this isn't about accounting anymore. I've been thinking the same thing. What are you thinking? He looked out the windshield. If this is only financial fraud, Maya wouldn't look terrified. Victoria remained silent. If she's frightened, Ethan continued, either someone threatened her, or the fraud covers something worse. The call ended without another word. On the drive home, Ethan stopped at a neighborhood gas station. While waiting in line, he noticed a familiar face on the television mounted above the counter. Ryan Whitmore. A local business channel replayed an interview from the previous afternoon. Ryan stood in front of Evergreen headquarters, smiling confidently. Our commitment has always been transparency and patient care. Ethan watched carefully. The interviewer asked about expanding government healthcare contracts. Ryan answered smoothly. Every sentence sounded rehearsed. Then one unexpected question came. How is Evergreen preparing for upcoming regulatory reviews? Ryan smiled. We welcome oversight. For the first time during the interview, his smile reached his mouth, but not his eyes. The expression lasted less than a second. Most viewers would never notice. Ethan did. Fear disguised itself differently in different people. Maya carried it in her shoulders. Ryan buried it behind confidence. The interview ended. Ethan returned home. Near noon, Claire Donovan called again. I found another former employee. Would they talk? Maybe. Maybe. Only if I guaranteed no recording. What department? Document retention. Ethan sat upright. What did they say? Claire lowered her voice. They claimed executives regularly ordered paper files destroyed after digital copies were made. That's normal. I know. But according to them, she hesitated, the digital copies sometimes disappeared later. Ethan said nothing. If both versions vanished, Claire continued, there'd be no record the originals ever existed. Did they have proof? No, just memories. Memories aren't enough. I know, Claire sounded frustrated. But every person I speak to tells a different story that points in the same direction. Which is? They all describe disappearing records. The conversation ended with no conclusions, only another direction to explore. That afternoon, Ethan walked into the garage looking for an old storage box. Inside were materials from his federal career. Not classified documents. Those had long ago been surrendered. These were personal reference books, interview techniques, evidence organization, case management. Tucked inside one folder was an old photograph. Ethan paused. The picture showed him standing beside a younger Victoria Bennett outside a federal courthouse. Both looked exhausted. Both were smiling. Written across the back in Victoria's handwriting were 6 words. Never chase theories. Collect facts. Ethan looked at the sentence for a long moment. He slipped the photograph back into the folder. The advice remained as true now as it had been 12 years earlier. At precisely 4:37 p.m., the front door opened. Maya stepped inside. She wasn't supposed to be home until much later. Ethan. I'm upstairs. She climbed the steps quickly. The moment she entered his office, he knew something had changed. She looked pale. Her breathing was uneven. She closed the door behind her. Then she walked directly toward him. Without saying a word, she pulled a folded envelope from her purse. I found this in my car. Ethan accepted it carefully. No return address. No stamp. No handwriting. Only a plain white envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper. 5 typed words. Stop asking questions about Evergreen. Nothing else. No signature. No threat. Just the sentence. Maya's voice trembled. I never told anyone you were looking. Ethan slowly folded the paper back into the envelope. I believe you. She stared at him. You do? Yes. Then how did they know? Ethan looked toward the window. He already knew the answer. Someone hadn't been watching Maya. Someone had been watching him. And whoever they were had just decided that silent surveillance was no longer enough. Ethan placed the envelope on his desk without touching the paper again. Neither he nor Maya spoke for nearly a minute. The silence felt heavier than the 5 typed words inside the envelope. Stop asking questions about Evergreen. It wasn't a threat in the traditional sense. There were no consequences described, no names, no demands for money. Just an instruction. That made it more unsettling. Professional intimidation often relied on implication rather than explanation. You really didn't tell anyone? Ethan asked quietly. Maya shook her head immediately. I haven't told anyone anything. Not a coworker. No. A friend. Ooh, no. Ryan. Her eyes widened. Absolutely not. Ethan believed her. Not because he wanted to. Because every answer came without hesitation. People fabricating stories often paused before absolute denials. Maya hadn't. He looked back at the envelope. When did you find it? This afternoon. Where? Under my windshield wiper. At work? She nodded. I thought maybe it was a parking ticket. And you opened it immediately? No. She swallowed hard. I waited until I was in my car. Did anyone see you? I don't know. That answer was honest. No one ever truly knew who had been watching a parking lot. Ethan reached into his desk drawer and removed a pair of thin nitrile gloves. Maya frowned. You think there'll be fingerprints? I doubt it. Then why? I don't want ours covering whatever's already there. He carefully lifted the envelope. Plain office paper, standard printer toner. Nothing distinctive. The flap had not been licked. It had been sealed with adhesive. No handwriting, no logo, no watermark. Deliberately anonymous. He slid the contents into a clear plastic document sleeve. Maya watched him. You've done this before. A few hundred times. She managed a weak smile. I forgot. I was hoping you had. She looked away. I never liked what your old job did to you. It taught me patience. It also taught you to expect the worst. He considered that. Sometimes. She walked to the window. The backyard was peaceful. Children laughed somewhere beyond the fence. A lawnmower hummed several houses away. Ordinary life continued outside, while something unseen crept steadily into theirs. Ethan. Yes. What if they're right? He looked at her. What do you mean? What if you should stop? Her voice cracked. What if whatever they're hiding isn't worth risking? She couldn't finish. He stood and walked toward her. Not too close, just close enough. Maya. She finally met his eyes. I'm not trying to expose anyone. I know. I'm trying to understand why my wife looks frightened every time she comes home. Tears gathered in her eyes. You can't fix this. I haven't decided to fix anything. Then what are you doing? I'm trying to learn the truth. She closed her eyes. The truth hurts people. So do lies. Neither spoke again. After another moment, Maya wiped her eyes. I have to go back. Tonight? They called another meeting. Another emergency. She nodded. They've been happening almost every day. Since when? She hesitated. About 3 months. 3 months. Exactly the same period Ethan had noticed the increase in late-night meetings. Pattern confirmed. Still, he didn't push further. She collected her purse. At the bedroom door, she stopped. If anything happens... Ethan looked up. Promise me you won't try to be a hero. He smiled gently. I've never been one. You know what I mean. I do. She left a few minutes later. This time Ethan did not follow. He remained in the office, studying the envelope. At 7 o'clock, his phone rang. Claire Donovan. I've got something. What? I finally convinced someone to meet. Who? A former Evergreen compliance manager. When? Tonight. Where? Small diner in Tacoma. Ethan checked the clock. I'll drive. No. Claire's voice sharpened. They only agreed because they think I'm coming alone. I'm not asking questions. They don't know that. Claire paused. But... They said something strange. What? They insisted the meeting happen outside King County. Why? They believe Evergreen has people watching. Ethan looked toward the empty driveway. They're probably right. Claire fell silent. You sound like you've seen something. I have. He briefly described the envelope. She cursed under her breath. That's not journalism anymore. No, that's intimidation. Another pause. If I learn anything tonight, you'll be my first call. The connection ended. Ethan walked downstairs. For the first time in days, he switched on the security system's archived camera recordings. The cameras covered the driveway, front porch, backyard, nothing more. He scrolled backward to the afternoon. 3:42 p.m., delivery truck. 3:56 p.m., neighbor walking her dog. 4:08 p.m., mail carrier, then 4:17 p.m. A man wearing a reflective utility vest entered the edge of the camera's view. Baseball cap, dark sunglasses, clipboard in one hand. He walked confidently toward the mailbox, then disappeared briefly outside the camera angle. 7 seconds later, he reappeared, walking away. Too quickly. Ethan replayed the footage. Again and again. The man never looked at the house, never rang the bell, never delivered anything. Yet during the 7 seconds he disappeared, he had enough time to reach Maya's parked car, place the envelope, return. Professional. Deliberate. Ethan froze the image. The resolution wasn't good enough for facial recognition, but something caught his attention. The man's boots. Heavy brown work boots with bright yellow paint splattered across the left toe. Odd. Real utility workers usually replaced damaged boots regularly. These looked intentionally worn. Costume, not uniform. He zoomed further. A small tattoo appeared just above the man's right wrist, where the reflective sleeve had slipped back. Only part of it remained visible. 3 black lines, possibly geometric, impossible to identify. Still, better than nothing. Ethan printed the frame. He placed it beside the envelope. Evidence, not speculation. At 9:11 p.m., Claire called. Her voice sounded different, breathing harder. Ethan? What happened? He never showed. The compliance manager. Yes. You waited 40 minutes. What then? Claire inhaled sharply. I found his car. Where? Behind the diner. And the driver's window was smashed. Ethan stood. Was he inside? No. Blood. A little. Police. They're already here. His stomach tightened. What did the police say? They think it was a robbery. And you? Claire answered immediately. I don't. Before Ethan could respond, another voice interrupted Claire in the background. An officer. She lowered her voice again. One more thing. What? There was something left on the driver's seat. What? A business card. Ethan waited. Claire spoke slowly. It had Ryan Whitmore's name on one side. And the other... She swallowed. The other side was completely blank. The call disconnected. Ethan remained standing in the middle of the living room. Outside, rain began falling again. He looked toward the folder containing every observation from the past 3 days. None of them proved a crime. Not yet. But together they formed something increasingly difficult to ignore. A frightened wife, vanishing documents, anonymous warnings, surveillance, a missing witness. And now, a business card that someone had deliberately left behind. Not as evidence, as a message. Someone wanted certain people to understand exactly who controlled the board. Ethan did not call the police. Not yet. Years earlier, that decision would have been automatic. Now it wasn't. He had learned that reporting incomplete facts often accomplished only one thing. It alerted the wrong people. Instead, he sat at his desk and opened a fresh notebook. Across the top of the first page, he wrote a date, then another heading. Verified timeline. Everything beneath it would contain only events that could be independently confirmed. 2:03 a.m. Suspicious text sent from Maya's phone. 2:58 a.m. Ryan Whitmore's Mercedes entered Harbor Grand Hotel. Approximately 7:18 a.m. Maya returned home. Following evening. Anonymous envelope placed beneath Maya's windshield wiper. Tonight. Former compliance manager failed to appear. Possible assault. Business card bearing Ryan Whitmore's name found inside abandoned vehicle. He stared at the page. Each event stood alone. Together they formed a pattern. Patterns mattered. Stories did not. His phone vibrated. Claire. I can talk now. Are you all right? Yes. The police released the scene. What did they find? Very little. Did they identify the compliance manager? They wouldn't officially confirm his name. But I recognized him. She paused. His name is Daniel Mercer. Ethan wrote it down. Have you spoken to him before? Twice. Did he ever mention Ryan? No. What did he mention? Claire sighed. Audit files. Specifically. He kept repeating the phrase, original approvals. Ethan looked towards the stack of documents on his desk. The same words appeared in a fragment I'd recovered. What fragment? He explained the partially restored message. Medical approvals must be completed before auditors arrive. Do not leave anything in email. Claire remained silent. Finally, she asked, What exactly do you think Evergreen does? I don't know. And that's what bothers me. After ending the call, Ethan leaned back. The room felt unusually quiet. Outside rain drummed steadily against the windows. His thoughts drifted back to Maya. She had said something earlier that refused to leave his mind. You can't fix this. Not you can't prove this. Not you can't stop them. You can't fix this. That sounded less like guilt, more like resignation. He reached for his phone, then stopped. Calling her during another executive meeting would accomplish nothing. If someone truly monitored executive communications, it might even place her in greater danger. He set the phone down again. Patience, always patience. At 10:30 that night, his security cameras detected movement outside. A notification appeared on his screen. Front driveway, motion detected. Ethan muted the monitor and enlarged the image. A vehicle had stopped across the street. Its headlights remained off. Not the blue SUV from before. This was a gray pickup truck. It remained parked for exactly 90 seconds. No one exited, no doors opened. Then it drove away. Ethan replayed the footage. No license plate, too dark, professional again. He copied the time into his notebook. Someone was checking the house, not attacking it, watching it. His phone rang almost immediately afterward. Victoria Bennett. You sound awake. I am. I've been reading. What? Public court filings involving Evergreen. You found something? Maybe. Ethan listened. 2 years ago, Victoria began. Evergreen settled a civil dispute with a small regional supplier. I saw that. You probably stopped reading after the settlement. I did. I didn't. Ethan straightened in his chair. What did you find? The supplier's attorney withdrew from the case 3 days before trial. That's unusual. It gets stranger. The replacement attorney withdrew 4 days later. And a third attorney finally negotiated the settlement. Conflict of interest. No explanation given. Victoria paused. I've practiced law for 30 years. Lawyers quit clients. They don't usually abandon million-dollar civil litigation days before trial. Ethan wrote another name into the notebook. Regional supplier. Unknown connection. Anything else? He asked. 1 sentence. What sentence? The settlement required both parties to destroy certain discovery materials after the agreement became effective. Ethan stopped writing. Destroy, according to the filing. Legally. The court approved it, he frowned. That's unusual. Extremely. The conversation ended. Ethan closed his eyes. Destroyed discovery materials, disappearing digital records, missing original approvals. The same idea kept returning. Not creating false documents, removing real ones. Near midnight, the sound of tires entered the driveway. Maya. Ethan looked through the front window. She remained inside the car. 1 minute passed, then another. She wasn't moving. He quietly opened the front door and walked outside. The rain had nearly stopped. He approached slowly. Maya, she looked up. Her face was pale. I couldn't make myself come inside. Why? She unlocked the door. Ethan sat in the passenger seat. Neither spoke immediately. The dashboard clock read 11:57. Finally, she whispered, Daniel Mercer is missing. Ethan kept his expression neutral. You know him? She nodded. He worked in compliance. When did you hear tonight? What were you told? That he resigned. You don't believe it? No. Why? She stared through the windshield. His office was cleaned out before lunch. Before anyone announced he had resigned. Ethan felt a chill. Who cleaned it? I don't know. But when I walked past, she swallowed. Every family photograph was gone. So were his books. So were his books. So was his computer. She turned toward Ethan. It looked like he had never existed. The words hung between them. Never existed. That was exactly how Claire had described former employees. They disappeared, not physically, professionally, administratively, as though someone erased them. Maya. She nodded weakly. Did Daniel know something? I think so. What? I don't know. She pressed trembling fingers against her forehead. But 3 weeks ago... She stopped herself. Ethan waited. No pressure. No assumptions. She took a slow breath. 3 weeks ago, Daniel came into my office. What did he want? He asked me if I had ever approved a shipment to a hospital I'd never heard of. And had you? No. What happened next? I checked the authorization. It contained my electronic signature. Ethan didn't interrupt. I never signed it. She looked directly into his eyes. I know exactly what I approve. I never approved that shipment. The words landed harder than anything she had said before. Not because they proved fraud, because of the certainty in her voice. What did Daniel do? He said he'd investigate. And after that? I never saw him alone again. Ethan remained silent. Some answers changed everything. This was one of them. If Maya was telling the truth, someone hadn't merely altered financial records. Someone had used her executive authorization without her knowledge. Outside, another vehicle slowly rolled past the house. Neither Ethan nor Maya noticed. They remained sitting in the parked car, unaware that from the darkness beyond the rain-covered street, someone was photographing every light burning inside their home. The camera shutter was silent. From across the street, the person inside the parked sedan captured 3 photographs in less than 10 seconds. One showed Ethan sitting in the passenger seat of Maya's car. Another showed the porch light, illuminating both of them through the windshield. The third focused on the second-floor office window. Then the sedan pulled away without turning on its headlights until it reached the end of the block. Inside the driveway, Ethan finally noticed the passing vehicle. Did you recognize that car? He asked. Maya looked into the darkness. No. It slowed down. I didn't even see it. He nodded. Neither of them mentioned surveillance. Not aloud. The word itself seemed to make the situation more dangerous. They stepped inside the house together. Ethan locked the front door. Then he checked every window. Not because he expected someone to break in. Because routine helped him think. Maya stood quietly in the kitchen, wrapping both hands around a mug of tea she had forgotten to drink. Ethan? Yes. If I tell you something... She hesitated. Promise you won't interrupt. I promise. She took a slow breath. 3 months ago, Ryan created something called the Executive Response Team. I've never heard of it. Neither had anyone else. Who was on it? Ryan. The Chief Legal Officer. The Chief Financial Officer. Myself. And Daniel Mercer. No board approval. Not that I know of. What was its purpose? We were told it would coordinate responses to government audits. That sounds reasonable. It did. She looked down into the untouched tea. But the meetings weren't about audits. What were they about? Ryan kept asking us the same question. She looked directly at Ethan. If investigators appeared tomorrow, what would concern you most? Ethan remained silent. She had asked him not to interrupt. Every meeting began with that question. Everyone answered. Every answer became a list. A week later, the list disappeared. She swallowed. Then Ryan asked the question again. Her voice grew quieter. The lists kept getting shorter. Until finally. She stopped speaking. Ethan waited. Until finally nobody admitted being concerned about anything. Only then did Ethan ask, and Daniel. He refused to change his answers. What kind of answers? He always talked about missing documentation. He said original approvals had to match electronic approvals. And if they didn't, she closed her eyes. Someone needed to explain why. The room became very quiet. The tea had begun to cool. Ethan finally spoke. Did Ryan ever respond? He'd smile and say, "We'll resolve that internally." She laughed bitterly. "I don't think anything was ever resolved." Ethan walked into his office and opened the evergreen folder again. He added a new section. Executive Response Team, members Ryan Whitmore, Chief Legal Officer, Chief Financial Officer, Maya Cook, Daniel Mercer. Purpose officially stated audit preparation. Purpose actually practiced identify organizational vulnerabilities before investigations. Still not evidence. Still only testimony. But testimony from someone with first-hand knowledge. He looked back toward Maya. Did anyone else question the process? She shook her head. People stopped asking questions. Why? I think they were afraid of losing their jobs. I used to think that. And now? I think they were afraid of something else. Before Ethan could ask what she meant, his phone rang. Unknown number. He answered without speaking. Several seconds passed. Only static. Then a calm male voice. You should listen to your wife. The line went dead. Ethan immediately checked the call duration. 7 seconds. No caller identification, no location. He did not call back. Maya stared at him. What happened? He told her exactly what the caller had said. Nothing more, nothing less. Her face lost its remaining color. They know I'm here. They probably know we're together. She sat down heavily. This has gone too far. Ethan agreed. It had. But not for the reason the caller intended. Anonymous warnings, surveillance, now direct telephone contact. Whoever was behind this believed intimidation would stop him. Instead, it answered an important question. They considered him a problem. At 6 o'clock the following morning, Ethan drove to a small cafe near Evergreen headquarters. He chose the same corner table he had used years earlier while waiting for witnesses during another investigation. From there, he could see the main entrance without attracting attention. Employees streamed into the building carrying coffee cups and laptop bags. Most looked ordinary, busy, sleepy, focused on another workday. Then he noticed something unusual. Every employee entering the building swiped an access badge, except one. Ryan Whitmore. The security guard opened the door before Ryan reached it. No badge, no scan, no recorded entry. Perhaps the CEO was exempt. Perhaps not. Ethan wrote it down anyway. Minutes later, another familiar figure appeared. The chief financial officer. He looked exhausted. He scanned his badge twice before the door unlocked. His hands were shaking. Interesting. Fear reached beyond Maya. At 8:14, a white cargo van stopped beside the loading dock. Its side displayed the logo of a document storage company. 2 workers unloaded empty archive containers. Ethan watched carefully. Empty containers went inside. 40 minutes later they returned. Now every container was sealed. The van departed immediately. He photographed it from across the street. Not because transporting documents was suspicious, because timing mattered. Daniel Mercer disappeared. The following morning, multiple sealed archive containers left the building. Coincidence remained possible, but coincidence deserved documentation. His phone vibrated. Claire Donovan. I found Daniel. Ethan stood immediately. Alive? Yes. Where? A hospital. Injured? He has a broken arm and a concussion. Can you speak to him? No. Why? Security. What kind of security? Claire answered slowly. Not police. Private security. Who's paying for it? I asked. No one would tell me. Ethan looked through the cafe window toward Evergreen. When can we see him? I don't know. But before they transferred him, he managed to say one sentence. What sentence? Claire read directly from her notebook. To let them certify the July files. The words hit Ethan immediately. July? The current month? Whatever Daniel had discovered, it wasn't about something buried years ago. It was happening now, right now. He ended the call and looked back toward Evergreen's headquarters. At that exact moment, Maya appeared through the glass entrance. She wasn't alone. Ryan Whitmore walked beside her. From across the street, they looked like ordinary executives discussing business. Then Ryan stopped. He turned slightly toward Maya. He placed a hand on her shoulder. Not aggressively, not affectionately. Deliberately. He leaned close enough to whisper something. Maya's expression changed instantly. Her shoulders stiffened. Her eyes lowered. She gave one small nod. Ryan smiled. Then both entered this building. Ethan lowered his camera. He had been watching body language for most of his professional life. That had not looked like encouragement. It had looked like a reminder, or a warning. For the first time since the mysterious text arrived at 2:03 a.m., Ethan stopped wondering whether Maya was hiding the truth from him. Instead, he began wondering how long she had been carrying it alone. Ethan remained in the cafe long after Maya and Ryan disappeared inside Evergreen's headquarters. His untouched coffee had grown cold. The notebook before him contained nearly 50 pages of observations, timestamps, names, and questions. Yet one conclusion had become increasingly difficult to avoid. Maya was no longer his primary mystery. She was becoming his primary witness. The distinction mattered. Witnesses concealed information for many reasons. Fear, loyalty, confusion. Victims often did the same. He closed the notebook and drove home. Halfway there, his phone rang. Victoria Bennett. I've been thinking. That's usually dangerous. She laughed quietly. It usually means I remembered something. What? The name Daniel Mercer. You know him? No. But I know the law firm that represented him years ago. Ethan waited. The firm specialized in corporate whistleblower cases. His grip tightened slightly on the steering wheel. Are you certain? I checked. They rarely accepted ordinary employment disputes. They mostly represented people reporting fraud involving government contracts. When? About 8 years ago. Did Daniel become a whistleblower then? I couldn't find any public filing. But someone from that firm advised him. Ethan exited the freeway. If Daniel already understood whistleblower law, he would have known exactly how dangerous missing records could become. The call ended. Ethan spent the rest of the drive thinking. Daniel Mercer, compliance manager, questions about original approvals, possible whistleblower experience, now hospitalized. None of it proved wrongdoing, but it explained why Daniel had refused to ignore inconsistencies. Back at home, Ethan unlocked the office cabinet containing his old reference materials. Inside sat several thick binders on federal healthcare reimbursement procedures. Outdated in some respects, still useful. He searched one particular section. Electronic approval chains. Every authorized medical shipment connected to federal reimbursement required a documented sequence of approvals. Changing one approval created inconsistencies elsewhere, unless someone altered the entire chain. That was difficult. Not impossible, but difficult. He pulled Maya's comment from memory. I never approved that shipment. If her electronic authorization truly appeared on documents she had never seen, someone had manipulated more than a signature. Someone had accessed executive credentials, or the approval system itself. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. No greeting, no introduction. Check your mailbox. He stood immediately. The front yard appeared empty. No pedestrians, no parked vehicles. He crossed the lawn cautiously. Inside the mailbox rested a plain brown envelope. Nothing else. He carried it inside without opening it. Gloves, plastic sleeve, photographs. Routine returned automatically. Inside the envelope lay a single flash drive. No label, no note, no fingerprints visible. He stared at it. This was different. The previous message had tried to stop him. This one wanted him to see something, or wanted him to infect his computer. He smiled faintly. Whoever prepared it underestimated him. He retrieved an old laptop from the garage, a machine permanently disconnected from the internet. No personal files, no passwords, no network access. He powered it on, inserted the flash drive. Nothing happened for several seconds. Then a single folder appeared. Archive. Inside were only 3 files. A scanned invoice, a spreadsheet, a short video. He opened the invoice first. Evergreen Biotech, medical equipment shipment, government reimbursement pending, electronic approval, Maya Cook. His pulse quickened. He enlarged the signature block. Everything looked authentic. Digital timestamp, authorization code, internal tracking number. He photographed the screen. Next came the spreadsheet. Hundreds of shipment numbers, hospital names, payment amounts. Most meant nothing to him, except one column. Override approved. Nearly every entry displayed number. 5 entries displayed yes. Each of those 5 contained Maya's executive authorization. Finally, he opened the video. Security camera footage. Poor quality. No audio. A small office. Date stamp from 6 weeks earlier. Daniel Mercer stood beside a desk reviewing printed documents. Another person entered. The camera captured only the back of the visitor. Dark suit, gray hair, tall. The visitor handed Daniel a folder. Daniel shook his head. The visitor pointed toward the papers. Daniel pushed the folder back. The visitor leaned closer. Spoke for nearly 30 seconds. Daniel remained motionless. Finally, the visitor picked up the folder and left. The video ended. No identification, no explanation, only confrontation. Ethan replayed it 3 times. Each viewing revealed something different. On the 4th viewing, he noticed Daniel looking briefly toward the security camera before the other man entered, almost as if he already knew the meeting mattered. Someone wanted this footage discovered, but who, and why only this clip? The files proved almost nothing by themselves. They raised more questions than answers, which made Ethan suspicious. Anonymous evidence often mixed truth with manipulation. He refused to accept any of it without verification. At 1:30 that afternoon, Claire called again. You sound excited. I am. I found Daniel's sister. What did she say? Daniel left her a voicemail yesterday morning, before he disappeared. Yes. Claire opened her notebook. He said, she read slowly, If anything happens to me, tell people I never lost the July approvals. Ethan closed his eyes. Lost. Not destroyed. Not deleted. Lost. Interesting choice of word. Anything else? He apologized. For what? I should have copied everything sooner. The message ended there. Ethan thanked her and hung up. Copied everything. The anonymous flash drive suddenly became far more interesting. If Daniel had created copies, how had they reached Ethan? He returned to the video. This time he ignored the people. Instead, he studied the room. Bookshelves, printer, calendar, coffee mug. Then his eyes stopped. A framed family photograph stood on Daniel's desk. Someone had turned it face down before the meeting. Not during. Before. Daniel hadn't done that. The photograph faced normally when the video began. Frame 1. Visible. Frame 2. Still visible. Then the visitor entered carrying the folder. As he placed it on the desk, his sleeve brushed the frame, turning it face down. Accidental. Perhaps. Or perhaps the visitor simply needed space. Ethan enlarged the image. The visitor's cufflink caught the light for less than a second. Silver, oval, engraved with a small evergreen tree. Not a random accessory, corporate branding, executive gift. He remembered seeing identical cufflinks in Evergreen's annual report, presented to senior leadership during the company's 25th anniversary celebration. Only executives received them. The visitor wasn't just any employee. He belonged to Evergreen's highest ranks. That evening, Maya returned home unusually early. She entered quietly, removed her shoes, then walked directly into Ethan's office. Before he could speak, she closed the door. I remembered something. He waited. About Daniel. What? The day he came to my office. She looked frightened. I forgot one sentence. What sentence? He looked at me and said. Her voice dropped almost to a whisper. If they ever come after me, they'll come after you next. Ethan felt every piece of the investigation shift. Not because the sentence proved anything, because Daniel had predicted exactly what was happening. Anonymous warnings, surveillance, missing records, someone following Ethan. And now, evidence arriving anonymously at his own home. For the first time, Ethan realized he might not be investigating a conspiracy that was unfolding. He might be walking into the final chapter of one that had already begun months before he ever received a text message at 2:03 in the morning. Ethan did not tell Maya about the flash drive, not immediately. It wasn't because he distrusted her, it was because he still didn't trust the files. Anonymous evidence had ended more than one legitimate investigation. Sometimes criminals leaked authentic documents. Sometimes they mixed genuine records with carefully fabricated ones. The fastest way to destroy a witness's credibility was to convince them to rely on poisoned evidence. He refused to make that mistake. Instead, he asked a different question. What happened after Daniel said that? Maya looked confused. If they ever come after me, they'll come after you next. She stared at the floor. I laughed. You didn't believe him. No. I told him he was overreacting. She closed her eyes for a moment. I wish I hadn't. What did he do? He apologized. For frightening you? She nodded. He picked up his folder, smiled, and said, I hope I'm wrong. She looked back at Ethan. I never saw him smile again. The room fell silent. Ethan wrote Daniel's exact words into his notebook, not because they proved anything, because exact language often mattered later. People rarely remembered facts perfectly. They remembered emotions even less accurately, but memorable sentences had a way of surviving. His phone buzzed. A calendar reminder. Meeting with accountant. He frowned. He had forgotten about it entirely. Months earlier, he had scheduled an annual review with his own tax accountant, Lisa Monroe. He considered canceling, then changed his mind. Routine mattered. People watching him expected either panic or obsession. Keeping ordinary appointments denied them both. Lisa's office overlooked Elliott Bay. The meeting lasted less than 40 minutes. Most of it involved ordinary financial planning, estimated quarterly taxes, retirement contributions, business expenses. As Ethan packed his papers, Lisa glanced at him. You look tired? I've been busy. She hesitated. I almost didn't mention this. What? Someone called our office yesterday. Ethan stopped moving. Who? They didn't identify themselves. What did they want? They asked whether you had changed your business address. When? Yesterday afternoon. What exactly did they ask? Lisa opened her appointment log. Has Mr. Cook relocated his consulting practice? That's all. They also asked whether you still handled healthcare clients. Ethan looked at her carefully. What did you tell them? The truth. That we don't discuss clients. She smiled slightly. I've known you long enough. I figured you'd appreciate that. He thanked her and left. The moment he reached his truck, he wrote another note. Unknown caller. Contacting unrelated professional associates. Expanding information gathering. Whoever was watching him wasn't relying only on physical surveillance anymore. They were mapping his professional life. That afternoon, Ethan drove to a public library instead of home. Not because he needed books, because libraries offered something increasingly rare. Quiet. He reserved a private research room and spread every verified fact across the table. Names, dates, locations, phone calls, public records, hospital references, inspection delays, anonymous messages. Daniel Mercer. He deliberately excluded one category, the flash drive. Until independently verified, it remained separate. He stepped back and looked at the wall. Something bothered him. Not what was present, what was missing. He counted the confirmed individuals directly connected to the executive response team. Ryan Whitmore, Chief Legal Officer, Chief Financial Officer, Maya Cook, Daniel Mercer, 5 people. Yet every documented meeting required administrative support, scheduling, meeting rooms, minutes, security access. Someone else had always been present indirectly, someone who organized everything. His eyes narrowed. He had spent days studying executives. He had depawned the assistants. Administrative professionals often saw everything, not because anyone confided in them, because calendars told stories, meeting invitations, room changes, visitor lists, travel schedules, patterns invisible to everyone else. His phone rang. Claire. I think I found the executive assistant. Ethan laughed quietly. So did I. You first. What do you have? Claire shuffled papers. Ryan's executive assistant resigned 6 weeks ago. Reason? Personal decision. Public announcement. No. Replacement. Temporary contractor. Name. Hannah Ellis. Ethan wrote it down. Anything unusual? The former assistant. Claire paused. Oh, deleted her LinkedIn profile the same week. Completely. Everything. No forwarding employer. No contact information. No public activity. Did you locate her? I've been trying. What about you? Claire asked. Ethan explained his theory about administrative access. Claire answered immediately. If Ryan wanted meetings to leave as little trace as possible, his assistant would know. Exactly. Before ending the call, Claire added one more detail. Hannah only lasted 19 days. What happened? Officially. Temporary assignment completed. You don't believe that? No. Why? Because Evergreen hired another temporary assistant 3 days later. 3 assistants in less than 2 months. High turnover, or something driving people away. When Ethan returned home, he found Victoria Bennett waiting in his driveway. She stepped out of her car holding 2 paper cups. I brought coffee. You usually bring problems. They pair well. He smiled despite himself. Inside the kitchen, he summarized everything that had happened since morning. Victoria listened without interrupting. When he finished, she asked only one question. Have you considered that this may not be about hiding fraud? What else could it be? She stirred her coffee thoughtfully. Containment. Ethan frowned. Explain. If someone believes a mistake has already happened, they stop trying to prevent it. They start trying to control how much survives. He considered the idea. Destroyed records, repeated document removals, administrative disappearances, inspection delays, executive meetings, anonymous warnings. Everything pointed toward containment, not expansion. Victoria looked at him carefully. You're assuming they're preparing for investigators. You think they've already had them? I think they may already know something is coming. Before Ethan could answer, the doorbell rang. Neither of them moved immediately. The bell rang again, one long press, not impatient, deliberate. Ethan walked to the front window. A woman stood on the porch, early 30s, dark coat despite the warm afternoon. No visible identification, no delivery package. She looked directly toward the house instead of at her phone, almost as if she knew he was watching. Ethan opened the door only halfway. Can I help you? The woman spoke quietly. Are you Ethan Cook? Yes. My name is Hannah Ellis. Ryan Whitmore's former temporary executive assistant. She glanced nervously over her shoulder toward the street. I can't stay. She reached into her handbag and removed a small spiral notebook. Not a phone, not a flash drive. Paper. She handed it to Ethan. I kept copies. Copies of what? My calendar. She swallowed. The meetings they said never happened. Before Ethan could ask another question, Hannah stepped backward. If anyone asks, you've never seen me. She hurried toward a waiting rideshare vehicle that had just stopped at the curb. Within seconds, she was gone. Ethan looked down at the notebook still in his hands. Every page was filled with handwritten dates, room numbers, initials, and appointment times. On the inside cover, one sentence had been written in blue ink. They never erased the calendar. They only erased the people. Ethan did not open this notebook immediately. Instead, he watched the rideshare disappear around the corner. Victoria stepped onto the porch beside him. You know her. I've never met her. But you know the name. Former executive assistant. Victoria looked toward the empty street. Interesting choice. What? She delivered paper. Ethan understood immediately. No metadata, no remote deletion, no hidden tracking software, just ink. Sometimes the oldest methods survived because nobody expected them anymore. They returned to the kitchen. Ethan placed the notebook between them. Neither spoke for several moments. Finally, he opened the first page. Each day occupied a single sheet. Dates, meeting times, conference room numbers, executive initials, color-coded circles. Nothing appeared remarkable at first. Then Ethan noticed something unusual. Every official meeting had a room number. Every unofficial meeting listed only 2 letters. BR. No conference room, no floor designation, just BR. He flipped through another week. Again, BR, then another month. The pattern repeated. Victoria leaned closer. What do you think it means? I don't know, but Hannah expected someone to understand it. He continued turning pages. A folded sticky note slipped onto the table. Only 4 handwritten words. Basement records, room B. Victoria looked up. So BR wasn't initials. It was the location. Ethan wrote the phrase into his notebook. Basement records, room B. The next pages became more interesting. Most executive meetings lasted 1 hour. The BR meetings varied: 20 minutes, 90 minutes, 3 hours. Some occurred after midnight, others on weekends. Many had no corresponding entries on Evergreen's published executive calendar. Off-the-calendar meetings, legally possible, but worth noting. Then Ethan stopped turning pages. One entry had been circled twice in red ink. June 18th, 10:30 p.m. BR, present RW, MCDM, CFO, legal. Below the initials, Hannah had written one sentence. Everyone left separately. No explanation. No further notes. Victoria frowned. Why would she write that? Because it was unusual. Executives usually departed together after late meetings. Separate departures suggested they didn't want to appear connected. Still, observation, not proof. Ethan continued reading. Near the final pages, the handwriting changed. The letters became hurried, less organized. Several dates had been crossed out. Meeting canceled, records moved, Daniel absent. Then 3 days before Daniel disappeared, another entry. 11:45 p.m. BR security override used. Ethan looked at Victoria. Security override. What would that mean? Someone entered without normal badge logging. His thoughts immediately returned to Ryan entering headquarters without scanning his access card. Was executive access bypassing security records possible? Verified, not yet. The notebook ended abruptly. The final page had been torn away. Only jagged paper fibers remained. Someone had removed it carefully. Victoria noticed. Hannah tore it out. Maybe. Or someone else did. Ethan slid the notebook into a document sleeve. He would scan every page later. Not tonight. His phone rang. Maya. He answered immediately. Everything okay? Her breathing sounded uneven. I'm leaving work. So early. They canceled every meeting. Why? No explanation. Where are you? In the parking garage. She hesitated. Ethan. What? I think someone is following me. His voice remained calm. Describe exactly what you're seeing. A black SUV. License plate. I can't read it. Has it followed every turn? I think so. Don't go home. Silence. Maya. I heard you. Drive somewhere public. The nearest police station, if possible. What about you? I'll meet you there. He ended the call. Victoria was already standing. I'll come. No. You're not arguing. She grabbed her keys. I've prosecuted too many intimidation cases to let you do this alone. 20 minutes later, they arrived at the Bellevue Police Department parking lot. Maya's car was already there. She stood outside speaking with a uniformed officer. The black SUV was nowhere in sight. Ethan walked over. The officer nodded politely. Your wife reported a suspicious vehicle. Did anyone locate it? We checked nearby streets. Nothing yet. The officer's tone remained professional. We advised her to document future incidents if possible. No report of a crime. No identifiable vehicle. No immediate action available. Exactly what Ethan had expected. Once the officer left, Maya exhaled slowly. I thought I was imagining it. You probably weren't. She looked at Victoria. I didn't want to call the police. I know, Victoria replied gently. But sometimes creating a record matters. Even if nothing happened today, a documented timeline could matter later. As they walked back toward their cars, Maya stopped. I remembered something else. Ethan waited. The executive response team. What about it? Ryan always carried one notebook. The same notebook? Yes. He never let anyone touch it. What color? Dark blue. What was inside? I don't know. But, she frowned. Every time someone mentioned documents, he wrote something down. Ethan exchanged a glance with Victoria. One notebook had just appeared. Another notebook remained missing. Perhaps Ryan's. Perhaps something else entirely. On the drive home, Ethan's phone vibrated with a message from Claire. Only 6 words. Found Hannah. She's gone again. Ethan called immediately. No answer. 1 minute later, Claire called back. I was too late. What happened? The rideshare company confirmed dropping her downtown. And she disappeared before I arrived. Did she leave anything? No. Claire sounded frustrated. But one witness remembered something. What? Hannah kept looking over her shoulder. Anyone with her? No. Did she say anything? Claire checked her notes. The barista overheard one sentence. What sentence? If they find the blue notebook first, none of this matters. The call ended. Ethan sat silently in this driver's seat after reaching home. Blue notebook, Ryan's notebook, or another one entirely. He entered the house, placed Hannah's calendar notebook beside the anonymous flash drive, then added a third item, the white envelope that had warned him to stop asking questions. 3 objects, 3 different sources, each pointing toward the same hidden struggle over records. Not money, not contracts, records. As he stood there, organizing the evidence, his home security monitor chimed softly. Motion detected. Front porch. Ethan looked at the live camera. No person stood outside. Only a medium-sized cardboard archive box rested neatly against the front door. Brown, unmarked, the same type used by corporate records departments. He zoomed in. Across the top, written in thick black marker, were 3 words: Return to storage. Ethan did not rush to the front door. He muted the security alert and continued watching the live camera feed. The archive box remained exactly where it had been left. No one appeared on the walkway. No vehicle passed the house. Victoria stepped beside him. Trap? Possibly. Explosive? I doubt it. Why? If someone wanted to hurt us, there were easier ways. He enlarged the camera image. Standard corrugated storage box. Plastic carrying handles. Packing tape across the lid. Nothing visible suggested immediate danger. Still, appearances meant very little. He called the local police non-emergency line. 10 minutes later, an officer arrived. After a brief inspection, the officer found no indication of explosives or hazardous materials. With Ethan's permission, the box was opened in the officer's presence. Inside were ordinary office supplies. 3 unopened packs of printer paper, 2 binders, a roll of packing tape, several empty file folders, and 1 sealed manila envelope. The officer looked inside the rest of the box. Nothing illegal here? He handed the envelope to Ethan. Looks like it belongs to you. After the officer left, Ethan carried everything into his office. He opened the manila envelope carefully. Inside was a single typed inventory sheet. No signature, no company logo, only a numbered list. Box 12. Vendor contracts. Box 18. Internal audit. Box 23. Executive calendars. Box 31. Original approvals. Every item had a small square beside it. Only 1 square had been marked with an X. Box 31. Original approvals. Victoria read over his shoulder. This isn't a message. What is it? It looks like part of a storage inventory. Ethan nodded slowly. If it's authentic. He flipped the page over. Blank. No additional notes. No instructions. No explanation of where the inventory belonged. Just the list. He placed it beside Hannah's notebook. Executive calendars. Original approvals. The overlap was impossible to ignore. Still, coincidence remained possible. He refused to move beyond the evidence. His phone rang. Claire. I found something buried in county property records. What? A warehouse lease. Evergreen. No. The registered tenant is North Ridge Logistics. Ethan opened his notebook. Address. Claire read it aloud. His pen stopped moving halfway through the street name. Riverside Industrial Park. Warehouse B. The same location mentioned months earlier in the recorded cassette from another investigation had nothing to do with this case. He reminded himself immediately. He crossed out the instinctive comparison. Different city, different people, different facts. "What caught your attention?" he asked. "The lease began 7 months ago. And the warehouse is much larger than Northridge would normally need. Do we know what's inside? No. But public utility records show electricity usage. High? Extremely low." Ethan frowned. "So they're paying for space they're barely using." "Exactly. Storage, not operations. Interesting." After ending the call, he searched county tax records. The warehouse existed. The lease existed. Everything Claire had described matched public filings. Verified. Not speculation. He highlighted the address. Warehouse B. Victoria noticed. "You're thinking about visiting?" "I'm thinking about looking from a public road." "Good. No trespassing. No shortcuts." She smiled. "You're finally sounding like the investigator I remember." The following morning, Ethan drove toward Riverside Industrial Park. He parked on a public street nearly 200 yards from the warehouse. No cameras pointed directly at him. No security guard approached. He simply observed. Warehouse B looked ordinary. Gray concrete walls, roll-up loading doors, minimal signage. One white delivery truck stood beside the loading dock. Nothing moved. For nearly 45 minutes. Then a forklift emerged, carrying 3 sealed archive boxes. Brown. Identical to the one left on Ethan's porch, the driver loaded them into the white truck. No company markings appeared on the boxes, no shipping labels, just black marker. Large handwritten numbers. Ethan lifted his camera. He photographed each box before it disappeared inside the truck. 31. Original approvals. His pulse quickened. Not because the number proved anything, because it matched the inventory sheet exactly. The truck departed. Instead of following it, Ethan stayed where he was. Old instincts urged pursuit. Experience overruled them. He lacked any lawful reason to follow a commercial vehicle. Instead, he photographed the truck's license plate as it passed on the public road. Documentation. Nothing more. His phone buzzed. "Maya. Can you talk?" "Yes." "I just received an email." "From who?" "Our legal department." "What does it say?" "They're requiring every executive to certify that all departmental records are complete and accurate." Ethan became very still. "When?" "By tomorrow afternoon." His eyes shifted toward the photograph of Box 31, original approvals. "What exactly are you being asked to certify?" Maya read directly from her screen. "To the best of my knowledge, all records under my authority are complete, authentic, and properly retained in accordance with company policy." He wrote every word. "Have you signed no? Will you?" "I don't know." Her voice trembled. "What if I can't honestly certify it?" "Then don't. It's not that simple." "I know." "No." She interrupted softly. "You don't." He heard people talking in the background. She lowered her voice. "Ethan." "Yes." "I think this is what Daniel was trying to stop." Before he could answer, the call ended. That evening, Claire arrived unexpectedly carrying a thin folder. "I had to show you this in person." She placed several photocopies on the table. "What am I looking at?" "Shipping manifests." "Source?" "A former freight dispatcher." "Authentic." "I can't prove it yet." Ethan nodded. "Then we'll treat them as unverified." Claire smiled. "I knew you'd say that." He examined the pages. Shipment numbers, dates, Warehouse B destination hospitals. Everything appeared routine. Then one column caught his attention. Certification status. Most entries read pending. A handful read complete. Every shipment marked complete corresponded to one of the override approvals from the anonymous spreadsheet on the flash drive. Interesting. Not proof. Correlation. Nothing more. He circled the matching shipment numbers. Victoria leaned forward. If those numbers eventually verify, Ethan finished the sentence. Then the flash drive becomes much more credible. For the first time, independent evidence had begun aligning with anonymous material. Not enough, but enough to justify further verification. His security monitor chimed again, motion detected. This time, the front porch camera showed no box, no visitor, only a small white envelope taped neatly to the door. Ethan sighed. They're getting predictable. He opened the door cautiously. The envelope contained a single Polaroid photograph. No note. No fingerprints visible. The photograph showed Warehouse B, taken from somewhere above, probably a nearby rooftop. Across the loading dock entrance, someone had drawn a thick red circle around one specific object. Not a truck, not a person. A blue metal door set into the side of the warehouse. On the back of the photograph, 5 handwritten words appeared in black ink. The records aren't inside there. Ethan turned the Polaroid over twice before setting it on the desk. The records aren't inside there. Victoria read the sentence silently. Interesting wording. You noticed it too? She nodded. It doesn't say the warehouse is irrelevant. It says the records aren't inside. Ethan looked back at the photograph. Someone had gone to the trouble of identifying one specific blue metal door, not the loading dock, not the office entrance. That implied whoever sent the picture expected him to focus on the wrong place, or had already seen someone else do exactly that. He added the Polaroid to a growing evidence board: anonymous envelope, flash drive, calendar notebook, storage inventory, warehouse photograph. Each item arrived separately. Each appeared to come from a different source, yet all pointed toward the same cluster of issues: records, approvals, calendars, storage. Nothing about hidden bank accounts, nothing about offshore transfers. Not yet. His attention shifted to the warehouse photographs he had taken that morning. He enlarged one image on his computer. The blue door occupied only a tiny corner of the frame. He zoomed further. Paint around the handle showed almost no wear. The loading docks displayed heavy tire marks. The pedestrian entrance showed faded footprints. The blue door looked almost untouched. Strange. If it wasn't used regularly, why highlight it? Or why tell him not to focus on it? He leaned back. The anonymous sender wasn't giving answers. They were shaping his attention. That made every anonymous message suspect. Useful, perhaps. Trustworthy, never. His phone rang. Claire. I spoke with the freight dispatcher again. What changed? He remembered something. What? The warehouse trucks almost never stayed overnight. Meaning, they arrived empty and left loaded. Within 30 minutes. Storage facilities usually accumulated inventory. This one moved boxes quickly, almost like a transfer point. Ethan wrote the observation. Did he know where the trucks went? No. They used subcontracted carriers. Another layer between origin and destination. Nothing illegal by itself, just harder to reconstruct later. After hanging up, Ethan returned to the calendar notebook. He searched every page for one recurring detail: warehouse, storage, records. Nothing. Then he noticed a symbol he had ignored. A tiny blue triangle appeared beside 6 different BR meetings. No explanation, no legend, only the symbol. He listed every corresponding date. The final one occurred 2 days before Daniel Mercer disappeared. Coincidence remained possible. Still, the pattern deserved attention. The next morning, Maya called before sunrise. I need to tell you something. You sound exhausted. I didn't sleep. What happened? They moved my certification deadline. When? This morning. So instead of tomorrow, they wanted by noon. His mind immediately began working through possibilities: acceleration, pressure, or simple administrative convenience. What reason did they give? Operational efficiency. She almost laughed. No one believes that. Have others signed, I don't know. But legal has been visiting executive offices one by one. Personally? Yes. They're collecting signatures. Not electronic, paper. Interesting. Has anyone come to your office yet? Not yet. When they do, she interrupted. I know. Read everything carefully. I will. Before ending the call, she added quietly, Ethan. Yes. If I refuse, what happens? I honestly don't know. At 9:30 that morning, Ethan received an unexpected email. Sender unknown. Subject line, public records request. Inside appeared only one sentence. You already have everything you need. No attachment, no signature. He checked the message headers. Nothing useful. Disposable email service. The sentence bothered him. Not because it threatened him, because it assumed something. Someone believed the evidence already existed. Perhaps it did. Perhaps he simply hadn't recognized it. He walked back to the evidence board. 5 anonymous deliveries. Calendar, inventory, flash drive. Warehouse photograph? Email? He forced himself to ignore the content. Instead, he examined timing. The flash drive arrived after Daniel disappeared. The calendar arrived after Hannah resigned. The inventory appeared after Maya mentioned certifications. Each delivery followed a significant event, not before. After. Whoever was sending them wasn't directing the investigation. They were reacting to it, almost as though someone inside Evergreen learned new information only after Ethan did. He circled the realization. Reactive, not proactive. Victoria arrived shortly afterward. Without speaking, Ethan pointed toward the timeline. She studied it for several minutes, then smiled. You finally found it. What? They're always one step behind. He nodded slowly. If they controlled everything, they wouldn't need anonymous warnings. They'd simply stop you. Exactly. The realization shifted the balance slightly. Someone inside the organization appeared worried, but not fully in control. That meant competing interests, not a perfectly organized conspiracy. Real organizations were messy. People disagreed. People leaked information. People made mistakes. That felt more believable. His phone buzzed. Maya. They're here. Legal? Yes. What are they asking? They've placed the certification in front of me. Read it. I already have. What does it say? Her breathing grew shallow. There's a new sentence. What sentence? I further certify that no unresolved discrepancies remain within my area of responsibility. Ethan closed his eyes. That language mattered. Very much. Maya. Yes. Is that true? Silence. Long silence. Finally, she answered. No. Then you can't sign it. I know. Another voice entered faintly from her end. Someone had entered her office. I have to go. The line disconnected. The next 2 hours passed painfully slowly. No messages, no calls, no emails. At 12:41 p.m., Maya finally called back. Ethan. I'm here. I didn't sign. He exhaled slowly. What happened? The chief legal officer asked why. What did you say? I told him I still had questions about several approval records, and he looked at me for a long time. Then, he said, she repeated the words carefully. Questions become liabilities if they're asked too late. Ethan wrote the sentence exactly. Anything else? He took the certification form. Unsigned. Yes. And left. No threat, no argument, no raised voices. Odd. Very odd. If the signature truly mattered urgently, why leave without it? Unless someone expected another opportunity. That evening, Ethan compared Maya's account with Hannah's notebook once more. One page caught his attention. The date matched today. Beside noon, Hannah had written only 2 words. Certification day. Nothing else. No names, no meeting. Just those words. She had written it weeks before leaving Evergreen, which meant today's certification drive had been planned well in advance. Not a sudden response to Daniel's disappearance, not a reaction to Ethan's questions. It had always been scheduled. His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of tires stopping outside. A delivery van. Ordinary? The driver approached carrying a certified overnight envelope. Ethan signed for it. The return address belonged to a law firm in Washington, D.C. He had never heard of it. Inside was a single-page letter. No accusation, no demand, no lawsuit, only one paragraph. Mr. Ethan Cook, our office has been asked to determine whether you would be willing to serve as an independent forensic consultant in a confidential document review involving Evergreen Biotech Solutions. If you are willing to discuss the matter, please contact us within 48 hours. No client name appeared anywhere in the letter, only the law firm's signature. Victoria read it twice, then looked up. They're not warning you anymore. Ethan folded the letter carefully. No. They're inviting me. Ethan read the letter a 3rd time before placing it back into its envelope. An invitation. Not a subpoena, not a warning, not a demand. Someone wanted him involved. The question was why. Victoria folded her arms. What bothers you? Everything. She smiled slightly. Be specific. The timing. He tapped the envelope. This arrives less than 3 hours after Maya refuses to sign the certification. Coincidence. Possible. But I don't make decisions based on possibilities. He picked up a magnifying glass from his desk and examined the letterhead. Heavy paper, professional printing. Nothing unusual. He searched the envelope next. Certified overnight delivery, legitimate postage, tracking number. Nothing suggested forgery. If this firm exists, Victoria sighed, someone spent real money sending that. They did. And anonymous people usually don't spend money when email is free. Ethan nodded. Which meant one thing. The law firm itself could probably be verified. That was a fact worth pursuing. He opened his laptop and searched the firm's public registration. Within minutes, he located it. The office existed. Its attorneys were licensed. Its address matched the envelope. He searched court records. The firm specialized in corporate compliance internal investigations and government regulatory matters. Real, established, nothing obviously suspicious. He leaned back. So the letter is genuine, Victoria corrected him. The law firm appears genuine. The client remains unknown. An important distinction. He highlighted it in his notebook. Verified law firm exists, not verified who retained them, why they selected him. His phone vibrated. Claire. I've got something small. Small is fine. I spoke with a former Department of Health investigator. What did they say? They remembered Evergreen. Specifically, they inspected one of Evergreen's facilities several years ago. What happened? They couldn't discuss internal findings. I expected that. But they did remember one unusual detail. What? They said Evergreen always assigned the same executive to accompany inspectors. Ryan? No. Maya. Ethan stopped writing. Every inspection. According to them? Why Maya? They assumed she understood operations better than anyone else. The call ended a few minutes later. Ethan stared at the notebook. Maya had accompanied inspectors, Maya questioned approval records. Maya refused certification. If she truly intended to hide misconduct, she had repeatedly placed herself in situations where inconsistencies might be discovered. That seemed unlikely. His confidence in her continued to grow. Not because he loved her, because the pattern fit. Late that afternoon, Maya returned home carrying her laptop bag. She looked exhausted, but calmer than she had in days. They didn't ask me to sign again. Nothing? Nothing? She sat across from Ethan. They acted. She searched for the right word. Carefully. What do you mean? No one argued. No one pressured me. No one even mentioned the certification. Almost as if it never happened. Victoria exchanged a glance with Ethan. Silence after pressure. Another pattern. Maya removed a folded sheet of paper from her notebook. I almost forgot. What's that? I printed the certification before they took it. She handed it to Ethan. He smiled faintly. You kept a copy. I thought you might want one. He compared the printed certification to the wording Maya had recited earlier. Everything matched. Then he noticed something almost invisible. At the bottom of the page appeared a document. Identification code. Rev 7. He frowned. Revision 7. Maya leaned forward. Is that important? Maybe. Why? If there was a revision 7, there were earlier versions. He searched the page again. No revision history, no creation date, just the code. Another question, not an answer. His phone rang again. Unknown number. This time he answered. Ethan Cook. A woman's voice replied. You received the letter. He remained silent. I'm calling on behalf of the law firm. Who is your client? I can't disclose that yet. Then why call? To answer one question. I haven't asked one. You don't need to. She paused. Our client specifically requested you because you are no longer employed by the federal government. Interesting. And they believe your independence matters. Independence from whom? I'm not authorized to answer. What type of document review? I'm not authorized to answer. Then what exactly are you authorized to tell me? Another pause. If you agree to meet, no one will ask you to reach a predetermined conclusion. That sentence caught his attention. Predetermined conclusion. An unusual promise. Where would the meeting take place? Our Washington, D.C. office. When? Within the next 48 hours. The call ended politely. No pressure, no threats, no salesmanship, just information. Victoria looked at him. What do you think? I think someone expects litigation. Or an internal investigation. Possibly. But whichever it is, he tapped the letter. They're assembling independent experts before something becomes public. That evening, Ethan returned to Hannah's notebook. Near the back cover, almost hidden beneath the spiral binding, he found a folded receipt. Not for a restaurant, not for office supplies, a self-storage facility. Rental unit B214. Paid in cash. 6 months earlier. No renter's name appeared on the receipt. Only a customer number. Victoria examined it. You think Hannah rented it? I don't know. But she tucked it inside her notebook. He wrote it another line in the timeline. Possible storage unit connected to Hannah Ellis. Unverified. Before he could think further, Claire sent a text message. Daniel Mercer has regained consciousness. Hospital limiting visitors. Attorney arrived before family. Ethan read the message twice. An attorney. Before family. That meant someone anticipated legal consequences almost immediately after Daniel regained consciousness. He looked toward the certified letter from Washington. 2 different lawyers. 2 different directions. One surrounding Daniel, another seeking Ethan. The investigation had quietly crossed an invisible line. Until now, nearly every development had involved missing records, suspicious meetings, and anonymous warnings. Now lawyers were moving into position. Whatever happened next would no longer remain confined inside Evergreen's executive offices. It was beginning to enter the legal system. And once that happened, every document, every signature, and every unanswered question would carry consequences far beyond a single late-night text message that had started it all. Every story reminds us that the greatest battles are not always fought in courtrooms, boardrooms, or headlines. More often they are fought quietly inside ordinary people who must choose between comfort and conscience, fear and courage, silence and truth. Real strength is not about never being afraid. It is about doing what is right, even when fear refuses to leave. Trust is one of the most valuable things we can ever give another person. But trust should never replace wisdom. Love does not mean ignoring difficult questions, and seeking the truth does not mean abandoning compassion. Sometimes the people we care about the most are carrying burdens they cannot explain. Not because they are guilty, but because they are trying to protect those they love. Patience, integrity, and courage often reveal the truth long before anger or suspicion ever can. No matter what challenges life places in front of us, remember that honesty leaves a trail even when others try to erase it. Lies require constant protection, but the truth has a remarkable way of finding its own path. Stay curious, stay kind, and never underestimate the quiet power of doing the right thing when no one is watching. If this story touched your heart, or made you think differently about trust, courage, and the search for truth, we'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoy meaningful stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications.